Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the Minute Waltz fades away, once more it's my huge pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country, but around the world. But also to welcome to the programme four exciting, dynamic personalities who this week are going to play Just a Minute as they speak on a subject that I give them, and they try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. And those four lovely people are seated on my right, Paul Merton and Zoe Lyons, and seated on my left, Tony Hawks and Gyles Brandreth. Please welcome all four of them. Beside me sits Hayley Sterling. She's going to help me with the score, and she will blow the whistle when the 60 seconds have elapsed. And we begin the show this week with Paul Merton. Paul, the subject I have here is the Decathlon. Will you tell us something about that sporting event, the Decathlon? It's not funny, it's quite a shame.
As I'm about to prove.
And your time starts now.
Well, the Decathlon is an event which encompasses 10 sporting activities. It's quite difficult to list them because there is some repetition amongst them. There is, for example, the 100 metres, the high jump, javelin, discus, but once you get beyond that, you do get into repetitive names. If you think of a particular...
Gyles, you've challenged.
Hesitation.
I'm afraid it was, yes. There are 44 seconds still available, Gyles. Will you tell us something now about the Decathlon starting now?
What an extraordinary year this has been for me. First, the successful Love Island auditions for next season. And then I'm being invited to take part in the Isle of Wight Decathlon, where my showing off as I did the discus push was considered completely remarkable by the people in freshwater, who said, would you do the 100 metres hurdle? Because we would love to see those legs flying high, zealously. How exciting.
Paul challenge.
I think it's the 110 metres hurdle in the Decathlon.
It would have been had I finished the race, but yes. Unfortunately...
I think actually got a point, but I don't know whether technically he was deviating from the subject because he was giving his own crazy version
yes,
of
absolutely.
it. I'll be fair, I give you a point for a correct challenge, but it can't take it away from you.
No, because
Gyles.
it was a correct challenge.
I'm rather excited that you didn't feel that my succeeding in the Love Island auditions wasn't the deviation.
They put all sorts of stuff on telly these days.
So Paul gets a point, Gyles gets a point, and Gyles, you have another 19 seconds starting now.
The most challenging part of the decathlon for me was throwing the javelin, because it is a sharp, long instrument, and when you lift it, it is heavier than you might expect, and the thrusting of it into the air is an extraordinary thing if you don't let go. And this was the mistake that I made. Over I went, and then under, but eventually...
In his game, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. It was Gyles Brandreth, so he's in the lead. In fact, he's the only one to score it so far. Zoe Lyons, will you begin the next round? The subject here is Tupperware. Oh, will you talk on that if you can for 60 seconds? Starting now.
I love a bit of Tupperware. In fact, I came to the show this afternoon with a bit of Tupperware in my bag containing my sandwich, which I enjoyed on the train, which was surprisingly on time, which doesn't happen often in this country. So it's always advisable to take quite a lot of Tupperware with you if you are on a rail journey of any description going across the United Kingdom, because you never know when you're going to be caught short or delayed for whatever reason, perhaps just issues, or maybe it would be snow, or it could even be leaves on the track. But you are fine because you are well stocked with Tupperware. Tupperware are like the socks of kitchen utensils. You never have a matching pair of lids and bases. They seem to disappear and dissipate within the cupboard. You'll have a square little round container and a round baby...
Well done, Zoe. You win for 51 seconds.
Oh, airtight.
But, Paul, you challenged first.
Well, repetition of round.
Yes, it was a correct challenge, Paul. Another point to you. The subject is Tupperware. 9 seconds to go, starting now.
There used to be a comic called The Rover, and in that there was a strip about Alf Tupper, the rogue athlete, and he would run around wearing particular suits, and these were known as Tupperware to his fans. They would point at...
So Paul Merton was speaking as the whistle went. Gained that extra point. And he's now equal with Giles Brandreth in the lead, and Tony Hawk's We'd like you to begin the next round. Tying the knot. Talk about it and what it means in this game, starting now.
First of all, I'm delighted to be talking to you at last. I've had to wait 3 rounds before I could get involved. Thrilling it is, now I'm kicking off. Now, tying the knot is something that people are incredibly keen on doing, pledging some kind of alliance to each other. Personally, I think there should be different marriage vows that go something along the lines, do you take this person to be your lawful wedded wife or husband as long as it seems like a good idea? That way we wouldn't have to go through this hideous ritual of getting divorced once we've found out they're not...
Paul, you challenge.
Divorce make it sound as if it's a necessary thing, a hideous ritual. When you get married, you don't necessarily get divorced, do you, Nicholas?
No, not necessarily. It's unfortunate. Sometimes it happens, yes.
I was
Stats
going to
are
go
on
on
your
and say,
side.
you go through this ritual once you discover, and I was about to explain...
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you didn't get there, did you?
No, because he buzzed.
Well, I was harsh on you the last time, you buzzed.
Well, to be honest, Nicholas, I don't think it's a very strong challenge.
So you don't want the
Brilliantly,
subject?
Paul is giving me the benefit of the doubt.
Tony, there are 23 seconds and with tying the knot starting now.
My father was in the merchant navy, and he would insist that my brother and I tied knots in a specific way. He was very keen on a round turn and 2 half hitches. And if we didn't get it correct, he was not a pleased man, not in any way. Didn't matter whether we were just attaching a bike to something
So Tony Hawks was then speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point for doing so. He's now in 3rd place. Paul's in the lead, 1 ahead of Giles, and he's 1 ahead of Tony, and they're 2 ahead of Zoe. And Giles, it's your turn to begin. The subject now, Corsica. Tell us something about Corsica in just a minute, starting now.
I know 2 things about the horse, and one of them is rather coarse. Fortunately, I am better informed about the beautiful island of Corsica, which is a French dependency and a marvellous place to visit. I went there when playing the young Napoleon, for Boney himself was born on that beautiful place we call Corsica, where the beaches are golden sand.
Tony challenge.
Why the young Napoleon?
Because of my appearance.
I was going to say...
Because he was born there. He left Corsica when he was older.
But
That's why I was
You played Napoleon as a baby?
No.
I thought you'd have played... No offence, but you'd have played him just towards the end on something like...
So, Tony, what is your challenge within the rules of just a minute?
There is no challenge. I thought I'd try to make a humorous interjection.
Which you've achieved, but I don't think we're strong enough to give you a bonus point. All right, the audience say yes. And Giles gets a point for being interrupted. Keeps the subject of Corsica. 37 seconds still available, starting now.
I went on a hitchhiking holiday to Corsica with my lovely friend Anne Widdecombe, that curious cross between Danny DeVito and Margaret Rutherford. And as we travelled around Corsica, we discovered what fun it would be sharing each other's backpacks and sandwiches brought in Tupperware. Because we always regard Tupperware... Oh, no!
It's so easy to do it, but that's the fun of this game, isn't it? Tony, you challenge me.
Yes, a repetition of Tupperware.
How right you are.
Yes.
And you've got about 2 seconds to go.
No, he's 16 seconds to go.
I'll never make it.
And it's with you, Tony, on Corsica, starting now.
Napoleon Bonaparte did tremendously well to become Emperor of France, given that he started off life in Corsica in a family...
Sorry, I was
challenge.
sorry. I think I was trigger happy. I heard 2 ins and I panicked.
We
Rechecking
don't
my
charge
mic.
any points for that. But say, Tony, you've still got the subject. 6 seconds available, starting now.
Bastia is an extremely nice port. I went there recently and wandered around...
Bastia is in Corsica, and Tony, you were speaking as a whistle when you gained an extra point, and you've gone forward into the lead, 1 ahead of the others. Paul, we're back with you to begin. The subject, a witch hunt. Tell us something about a witch hunt in just a minute, if you can, starting now.
There's a Vincent Price film made in 1968 called Witchfinder General, where he plays a character who's going around about the time of the English Civil War, seeking out witches here and there in the English countryside.
Zoe Challenge.
I think there were two Englishes.
Oh, English film, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, yeah.
Well, listen.
The buzz I get from that is amazing. Right.
Well, listen, Zoe, this time you were right. 49 seconds available. You have the subject of a witch hunt starting now.
Every Easter, my family would take a different view on the egg hunt, and we would, in fact, just hide witches around the garden and have to try and see where they were. It was quite difficult to spot where the witches were. Oh.
Tony, you challenge
Is there
first.
hesitation there?
And repetition.
And a repetition of witches. And she probably deviated, but I can't remember.
Definite
how many do you
deviation.
want,
Which,
Nicholas?
which challenge are you going to give me?
I'll
Go for all
I'll
three.
go for the hesitation. She went,
No,
oh.
she didn't hesitate. She did repeat. So you got it wrong.
Nicholas, when you go, oh, does that count as a hesitation?
That was after she'd... I see what you mean now.
look,
It's an impossible decision. Give him a point, because he has a point. But Zoe, you've still got the subject and the point, of course.
It does now feel like a bit of a witch hunt, to be honest with you.
36 seconds available starting now.
If you are going to go searching for witches, I suggest that...
And Paul challenge.
Repetition of witches.
Oh, yes. Because the subject is witch hunt. Paul, you've got the subject back. You've got 33 seconds if you need it. A witch hunt starting now.
We spent some time searching for warlocks, but then we looked for their female equivalent, and we found a witch at the end of our garden. Her name was Esmeralda, and she had about her a character which you could suggest was magical, but also somewhat evil. Her dark eyes would drill into the very soul of your being, as you realised she was able to read your mind through the caprice of her mischievousness. She would say...
Tony challenge.
he's made up a new word there.
It's a 16th century word. It means mischief. Mischievous.
What is your challenge?
Deviation from the English language. as you know.
Tony, correct challenge. 10 seconds available. A witch hunt starting now.
We lost a consumer magazine in our house once. We wandered all around trying to find it and decided to call it a witch hunt.
So Tony Hawkes was again speaking as the whistle wind gained that extra point, has increased his lead at the end of the round. Zoe Lyons, we're back with you to begin, and the subject now is Bognor Regis. Bognor Regis is the subject, and 60 seconds available if you need it, starting now.
Oh, how I love to visit Bognor Regis in West Sussex on the coast, gleaming like a gem-like beach town that it is. You can stride out onto the beach and go up to your...
Gyles challenge.
Repetition of beach.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, yes.
This is harder than you anticipate.
48 seconds are available. You've got a correct challenge, Gyles, and you've got Bognor Regis starting now.
When Bognor became the setting for Jane Austen's partially finished novel, Sanditon.
Hesitation.
I call that hesitation, yes. So, Tony, you've got Bognor Regis. You haven't got Bognor Regis. You've got the subject of Bognor Regis. And 42 seconds available, starting now.
Regis means of the king. And this is because King George...
Paul, you challenge.
Repetition of Tupperware. Repetition of king.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Almost consecutively.
Yes.
36 seconds. Bognor Regis starting now.
It does sound to my ears a little bit like a medical condition, but somewhat better than Littlehampton, which is just along the road. Because Bognor Regis is one of those towns, I believe it was one of the kings that went there. One of his last phrases was something along the lines of bugger Bognor, which was an unfortunate thing to issue as an order.
Giles challenge.
Because this is Radio 4, as a point of information, it wasn't one of his last phrases. It was said some years before his passing in 1929.
So
I couldn't care less.
I know, but the controller of Radio 4 would care because this is a station that means something important.
Well,
to
I was
people.
around in 1929, but I don't remember him.
Your parents were caring people. They would have guarded your ears against the phrase bugger anything.
So what's your challenge within the rules of adjustment?
My challenge is it's factually incorrect. He is setting out a story about the origin of the name Bognor Regis.
But when did
and the
he die?
information
He died in when? 1936?
Yes.
Well, you could say that was towards the end of his life. That's what
1929? No.
Yeah,
no.
7 years.
He said
what do you
was...
think?
No, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to join in the argument?
Excuse me. Between 1929 and 1936, he had a great deal to say, some of it very interesting indeed.
Paul, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt.
How could you possibly do that? Oh, how can I say? Kenneth Williams is revolving in his grave. I mean, this is so appalling. Poor Lord Reith.
Could we have the drugs for Gyles?
Well, once before, earlier on, I gave you the benefit and you got the subject, and Paul got a point. This occasion, you're going to get a point, but Paul's got the subject. 20 seconds, Paul. Bognor Regis starting now.
When I was a boy, I went to a holiday camp in Bognor Regis run by Butlins, and it was marvellous because I enjoyed the whole atmosphere of Bognor Regis. And I remember thinking to myself, anybody that would suggest doing something awful to this town is really clearly not a king that I could probably... That's king up.
Tony Jones.
Yes, repetition of king.
Yes.
And Tony, you've got him with 5 seconds to go. On Bognor Regis, starting now.
I like to strip down on Bognor Regis.
Paul challenge.
You like to what?
Strip down.
Strip down.
Oh, I thought you said slip down. I couldn't quite hear.
You brought the whole
I
thing to a
want to know, do you
halt.
completely strip down, Tony, or is it just...
Yes, on the beach.
Right, yeah,
On the
absolutely.
beach.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was an incorrect challenge.
his budgie
There's
snuggles.
still 3 seconds to go, Tony.
I'm
on
picturing
Bognor
it.
Regis, starting now.
On many an occasion, Lulu has asked me...
Tony Hawk's pushing the whistle when gained an extra point, has increased his lead at the end of the round. And Tony, we're actually back with you to begin. And the subject now is Anne Hathaway. Tell us something about Anne Hathaway starting now.
It's interesting to think that William Shakespeare and Emmanuel Macron have something in common. They both fell in love with older women when they were teenagers. Take that away with you and surprise a friend. Now...
I don't think it'd be a friend for much longer if he was older than that.
Have you a challenge with the rules of just a minute?
Well, it was a hesitation.
There was a hesitation, yes, I agree. 45 seconds are still available. Anne Hathaway starting now.
Well, William Shakespeare told Anne Hathaway where we were going for the honeymoon. She said, bugger Bognor, I'm not going there. And it turned out that she was, in fact, right, because
Tony, you've challenged.
hesitation.
Another hesitation, right. Tony, you've got the subject back. 37 seconds. Anne Hathaway starting now.
There's a lot of theories about whether the bard married her because he had to. She was allegedly pregnant. It could have been a shotgun wedding. Although no one's...
Giles challenge.
She wasn't allegedly pregnant. She was pregnant at the time of the marriage.
Certain people were alleging it. I didn't say everybody was.
You said she was allegedly
Yeah, but she
pregnant.
wasn't.
I'm telling you she was pregnant. That Judith was born 6 months after the nuptials.
What do the audience think? Do you think she was pregnant?
Yes, she was pregnant.
Right. All right. So, Giles, you've got the audience with
It
you.
was 500 bloody years ago.
And a point there. And, Giles, you've got 26 seconds. Anne Hathaway starting now.
Anne Hathaway is one of the loveliest actresses working in Hollywood today. She and I got together last year when she was over publicizing a princess film that she had been in, and we hit it off beautifully. I can't pretend that she made any overtures to me. This was a matter of regret. No beautiful actress ever has. However...
Zoe challenge.
Repetition of actress.
Yes, there's more than one actress then.
Yes.
So, Zoe, correct challenge. You've got in. 9 seconds available, starting now.
I'm not a massive fan of Anne Hathaway, I have to admit, although I have enjoyed watching The Devil Wears Prada. But if I did have to name any of her...
So, Zoe Lyons was then speaking as a whistle when gained that extra point. She has moved forward. And, Giles, we're back with you. And the subject is serendipity. 60 seconds if you need it, starting now.
By happy chance, knowing things about Anne Hathaway when no one else does and being well informed on Bognor and its heritage in terms of royalty is what serendipity is all about. An intriguing word introduced to our language by the great Horace Walpole in the 18th century. It dates from that time because the island of Serendip, later known as Ceylon and eventually as Sri Lanka, is a beautiful place that you would come on to by complete happenstance.
Tony challenge.
It's not a good idea to come on to an island.
But It is if you're on board the boat and you are coming onto it from a raft.
I thought you were flirting with it.
That is just the poetic way in which I speak.
That's the way you can interpret the phrase, Tony.
Yes.
Gyles, an incorrect challenge. You saw the subject. 32 seconds are available for Serendipity, starting now.
I have recently been asked to take part in an old codger's television programme called Serendipity. The working title had been The Real Marigold B&B in Prestati. And the other...
Repetition of B.
Yes. Absolutely.
This is how we're going to play, is it?
But that's a correct challenge, Gyles.
As if Gyles, you've never played like that before.
22 seconds are still available, Tony.
I'm sorry I took
point.
the beta
What's the
blockers this
subject?
morning.
Oh, yeah.
You have the subject of Serendipity, Tony, starting now.
A serendipitous event is something like a happy accident. Falling off a bike while laughing would be an example of that. It's never happened to me, but serendipity is a marvellous thing to happen in your life.
Zoe challenge.
Repetition of happen, I think.
Yes, right, Zoe, you got in there first. And there's still 6 seconds available. Tell us something about Serendipity with you, Zoe, starting now.
A fine example of serendipity is me having just 6 seconds left on this subject when...
Tony challenge.
She's only got 3 seconds.
Give him a bonus point, but she technically still has 6 seconds because that's what I told her she had. So you get a point for being interrupted, Zoe.
Thank you.
And there is 1 second to go. Serendipity, starting now.
Serendipity.
So Zoe Lyons was then speaking as the whistle went, and she gained that extra point. She's equal now with Giles Brandreth and Paul Merton in second place, behind our leader, Tony Hawkes. Paul, we're back with you to begin. The subject, the Lake District. Tell us something about that area in this game, starting now.
The Lake District, what a wonderful national park that is of Great Britain. I remember once making my way across Lake Windermere when I suddenly saw coming towards me a rude canoe, and inside an even ruder individual. It was Nicholas Parsons, the scourge of the Lake District. Across one eye was a patch, the skull and crossbones were on his T-shirt, and there was a cackling maniacal laugh about him. I realised I was in serious trouble. He wanted me. He needed to possess me. And
Zoe, you challenge.
Oh, there was a couple of things going on there. First of all, the imagery was way too much, and secondly, there was a slight hesitation and again a creation of a word I think that didn't really exist. So I'm going to say hesitation.
Well, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt because really it was rubbish he was talking. So anyway, Zoe, you got the subject. You've got 30 seconds on the Lake District, starting now.
I have enjoyed many a summer evening in the Lake District where you can watch fell runners running up hills and then falling back down them. It was a favourite spot of Beatrix Potter, who wrote such lovely books about rabbits and bunnies.
Paul
you said
challenge.
rabbits?
No, I said rabbits.
Oh.
And a rabbit is just a bunny crossed with a rabbit anyway.
So another point to Zoe. Incorrect challenge. And so you've got 16 seconds. The Lake District, starting now.
Such beautiful hills.
Tony challenge.
I think she was running up hills before. The fell runners were running up hills.
So many hills.
Well, listen,
That really
Tony,
is the
another
high
point to
point of
you.
the Lake District, though.
And the Lake District is with you now. 14 seconds, Tony, starting now.
William Wordsworth spent quite a bit of time up on the Lake District, and it probably gave him the inspiration for I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, which is pretty inaccurate. No cumulus lingus has ever...
So Tony Hawkes, speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point, and I just had a message that we're moving into the final round. Tony's in a strong lead there. And equal in second place, Giles Brandreth, Paul Merton and Zoe Lyons. And, Tony, we're back with you to begin. A morning suit. Can you tell us something about a morning suit starting now?
I have a suit that I like to wear before 12 p.m, and I call it my morning suit. And I wear it to funerals, too, where it's appropriate. That's not getting a laugh. It's created darkness in the room. However, I'm still going strong, and that's the main thing, isn't it? Now...
I don't think he's going strong.
So I think we'll interpret that as hesitation.
Deviation as well.
Oh, yes, all right. So, Paul, a correct challenge. You have 40 seconds. The subject is a morning suit, starting now.
As I was crossing Lake Windermere in a rude canoe, I was wearing a morning suit because it was still that time of day when I looked up towards the horizon, and there was a strange mythical creature coming towards me. It was the abominable snowman in a Tupperware box. And what's the matter now? Who's buzzed then? And King George said, "Bugger, Bognor, I'm going to Lake Windermere." And then he died.
Zoe, what was your challenge?
I think it was a hesitation of a treacher, a strange creature.
Yes, absolutely.
Right,
Which,
yes. Another point to you, Zoe.
There was an actor called Arthur Treacher, but I wasn't referring to him.
And you have 28 seconds, Zoe. A morning suit, starting now.
A morning suit is delightful to wear, but my favourite sort of attire is my birthday suit because it just fits me so...
Giles' challenge.
Deviation moved straight off from the morning suit onto her favourite suit, the birthday suit.
I was going to come back to the morning suit.
No, you weren't.
I had every intention of bringing it round cleverly.
Once you're stripped off and you're in that birthday suit, you're prancing about all day long. No hope of getting you back into your morning suit.
I think technically you are correct.
Yeah, thank you.
So you have a correct challenge, you have a point, and you have 21 seconds if you need it. A morning suit, starting now.
As regular listeners will know, I have hosted the British Funeral Directors Awards, rather a quiet event where the highlight is the crematorium of the year, the creme de la creme, and for
So you've lost it, but it was worth it for the laugh, wasn't it? So, Tony...
repetition of creme.
So you got the subject back, Tony. A morning suit, and there are 11 seconds if you need it, starting now.
These are very popular at weddings. You're asked to wear them. I had to hire one in once. I slightly...
Paul challenge.
Oh, I don't know. This is a bit harsh, I think. But did we have wear before? When I wear them at funerals?
Yes, he did say that, yes. Well, listen, Paul. 5 seconds are still available, Paul Merton. A morning suit starting now.
Let me describe to you the most perfect morning suit I ever saw in my entire life.
So, Paul was speaking as the whistle went. I'll give you the final score. It's very interesting. Paul Merton, Giles Brandreth, and Zoe Lyons are all equal in second place. But they are 7 or 8 points behind our leader, Tony Hawk. So we say, Tony, you are a winner this week.
Yeah!
So we're going to arrange for me to say thank you to these 4 fine players of the game, Paul Merton, Zoe Lyons, Tony Hawks, and Giles Brandreth. I thank Hayley Sterling, who's helped me with the score, blown her whistle with such style. And we thank our producer, Richard Morris. We're indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this amazing game. And we're also deeply indebted to this lovely audience here. So from them, from me, Nicholas Parsons, and the team, goodbye. Tune in again the next time we play Just a Minute. Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it's my huge pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country, but around the world, and to welcome to the show 4 exciting talented performers, and they are seated on my right, Paul Merton and Pam Ayres, and seated on my left, Julian Clary and Josie Lawrence. Please welcome all 4 of them. And as usual, I'm going to ask them to speak on a subject that I give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation of repetition or deviation. Beside me sits Hayley Sterling, who helped me with the score. She'll blow the whistle when the 60 seconds have elapsed. And we begin the show this week with Julian Clary. Julian, a free kick. Will you tell us something about that in this game, starting now?
I thought all kicks were free, but anyway, it's something that goes on in football, which there's been a wealth of recently on the television. 3 matches a day. Oh, goodness me. Yes, a free kick. I think someone does something wrong, and then it is awarded to the opposition, and they all line up and scratch their heads and do a bit of spitting. Sometimes they cover their private parts in case this kick goes into their genital region, and that would be awful, wouldn't it? That would be a very expensive kick. Free kicks are
Pam Ayres challenged.
I thought there was hesitation.
I think you were right, Pam. You get a point for a correct challenge. You take over the subject. There are 26 seconds available. A free kick starting now.
My friends have got donkeys called Poitou, and they are from France and famous for their long, shaggy coat. Any time if you walk past the rear department of one of these equines, you can be guaranteed to receive a free kick from one of its brown, shiny hooves. This creature is not at all fussy.
In this game, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point, and it was Pam Ayres, so she's now not only in the lead, she's the only one to have any points at the end of that round. And Josie Lawrence would like you to begin the next round. The subject, the garden centre. Tell us something about the garden centre in this game, starting now.
I don't like designer shops for shoes and handbags and jewellery, but a day out at the garden centre and I am anybody's. It's just wonderful. Let's first of all go to the little place where they sell the solar lights and the little mobiles that you can hang in the branches. I adore that place. And then out into the air.
Julian challenge.
Repetition of place.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, another place.
I got carried away because I love them so much.
I know. I could
It's interesting to hear that if you go to a garden centre, you are anybody's.
Yeah. Well, I mean, get it where you can.
Yeah. do the men have a hard time finding the clematis?
No.
Julian, correct challenge. And you have 36 seconds if you need it. And the subject is the garden centre, starting now.
I once had terrible trouble forcing my rhubarb, so I went down to the garden centre to seek advice. And you know, Josie's right, they are wonderful places. Not just plants and soil and wheelbarrows, all that kind of carry-on. No, there's a café there, and you can get a 3-course meal at a very reasonable price. And the class of person at garden centres is amazing. Rustic types, men with grubby hands and stubble, or middle-aged women mincing around saying, oh, I fancy a nice pink geranium. I was there for, goodness me, must have been.
So as I said before, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gain the extra point. And it was a case of Julian Clary, and he's in the same position with Pam Ayres. They both have 2 points each. The other two have yet to score, but it is early days. And Pam, we're with you to begin. And the subject is copper. Tell us something about copper in this game, starting now.
I have 2 memories of copper. One is of my dad saying, here's a few coppers, go down the sweet shop and buy thyself a bag of lollies, which was really nice, and by which he meant the coins made of copper which were in his pocket. The other connotation is of the village policeman, who we didn't like very much because he had to be nosy and to be informed of all the activities and nefarious things that the populace was getting up to. But on the other hand, you had to consider that if anything went wrong and you were in trouble, or you were trying to fill in a form that you couldn't understand, you could go to the copper and he could be depended upon.
Paul challenge.
Well, repetition of could, quite quickly. You could go to the copper and he could
you
be...
that, you could that. So, well, listen, Paul, you... I know it's when someone's going so well and goes for so long, it doesn't seem fair, but those are the rules of the game. And, Paul, you have a correct challenge, so you have 8 seconds still available. Tell us something about copper, starting now.
In the film The Blue Lamp, Dirk Bogarde says to George Dixon, I'll drop you, copper, outside the cinema that he's robbing. And this was not the end.
So Paul Merton speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point. And Paul, we're with you to begin. Subject, old-fashioned comedy world. George Formby. I'm sure you know something about him, but tell us in this game, starting now.
Very popular film comedian in the 1930s and 40s. When he was touring around the music halls in the 50s, a woman pointed at a poster of him and said to the small child she was with, "Look, that's what you'll end up looking like if you don't stop playing with yourself." And he heard this exchange because he wasn't particularly a good-looking man with his buck teeth and his eyes were quite close together, but he was an expert on the instrument called the banjolele, which is a cross between a banjo and a ukulele. And he was so popular in other European countries, such as Russia, he was given the Stalin Award for heroism or something like that. And he was seen as a great...
Julian, challenge.
Oh, it was ages ago, but it was repetition of popular.
Oh, yes, it was popular at the beginning and popular in Russia. So, Julian, a point to you for a correct challenge. And 27 seconds are still available. Tell us something about George Formby, starting now.
George Formby learnt his act more or less from his father, although he never saw him appear live. Someone else coached him after his pa died.
Josie, challenge.
Yes, hesitation.
Yes, you got in first, and hesitation's correct. And you have 19 seconds if you need it on George Formby, starting now.
Mother, that man's outside leaning on the lamppost waiting for me to go by. I think he's stalking me. That's how George Formby got the idea for that song. He also...
Julian, challenge.
No, he didn't.
Well, he did in my world. I'm being imaginary.
Oh, do carry on then.
Thank you.
I don't think he wrote the song.
His
No,
father
he did in my world. I'm being imaginary.
Yeah, she did establish it was her own imagination. Was,
sure.
Prompted by that. Yeah. So you get the benefit of the doubt.
Thank you,
and
thank you,
you
Nicholas.
have 7 seconds still available. And another point, of course. Tell us something about George Formby, starting now.
He also sang something about a little stick of Blackpool rock that he would suck on while...
So it's very even pegging. And Josie got a point for speaking as the whistle went. She's now equal with Julian and Clary. They're both 1 point ahead of Paul and Pam. And Julian, it's your turn to begin. And the subject is my favourite café. Tell us something about that subject in this game. 60 seconds if you need it, starting now.
My favourite cafe is called the Greasy Sandwich, run by a man called Brutus. And after his English breakfast, you'll have trouble walking home, is all I can say. It is a very unpretentious place. There's grease cloths and paper plates, but the food is something you go back for time after time. A lot of...
It's so natural to say it, isn't it? But not in just a minute. So, Josie, your
repetition.
turn. Yes. And you have 37 seconds if you need it. My favourite cafe, Josie, starting now.
My favourite cafe, I can't give too much away because I don't want loads of people to go there, but it's in the East End and is owned by friends of mine. It's also connected to a delicatessen, so you can choose things, the cornucopia of different foods from the counter, then sit outside and watch the world go by. And that's what I like to do. I sit there with my cup of coffee.
And Julian, challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, correct challenge, Julian. My favourite cafe is with you. 11 seconds starting now.
I've changed my mind. The Café de Paris is my particular one that I go to. So elegant. No common people at all. Waiters with bow ties.
Julian Clary, speaking as a whistle went, gained that extra point for doing so. And he's now 1 ahead of Josie Lawrence in that order, and then the other 2 are following. And Josie Lawrence, we'd like you to begin the next round. The subject, a barge. Tell us something about a barge in this game, starting now.
It's funny how the word barge can be so aggressive. Don't barge into me. And that the actual vehicle itself, our barge, is such a relaxing way to spend time. There's a wonderful programme with Timothy West and Prunella Scales. I don't know if...
Pam, challenge.
That programme's not about barges, it's about narrowboats, and there's a difference because a narrowboat is 7 feet wide and a barge...
And now you know what a barge feels like.
I'm not going to judge on that one.
No,
I'm
it's,
sure some people call a narrowboat a barge on occasions.
No, there is a definite difference.
I
didn't know that.
No, a narrowboat is 7 feet wide. Anything over 7 feet wide is a barge.
Oh,
right.
So they are often wrongly called...
Save it, darling, because you're going to get in now. Because you have a correct challenge. You have 44 seconds. Tell us about a barge starting now.
The old Wilton Barks Canal used to flow through Uffington, and as a child I stood on the banks and imagined the craft as they travelled along it, loaded in my imagination.
Paul, challenge.
I don't know if I'm right here, because I don't know much about it, but do canals flow?
Yes.
Yes.
Do they?
Yes.
They're not stationary.
Aren't they?
Definitely.
I'm just wondering. I just didn't know. I always sort of think of them in still water, but no, they flow, do they?
No, they flow around Uffington.
They flow, do they?
So, Paul, an incorrect challenge.
Yeah,
Pam, you
incorrect
still have the
challenge, but I've
subject.
learnt something.
And you have 30 seconds to go, Pam, on a barge starting now.
Cargoes of molasses, brown sugar, sugar cane, and types of things.
Josie, you challenge.
Sorry, is sugar cane and sugar, are they two different words?
Yes, so definitely.
All right. I know that, I know. Sugar cane's 7 inches wide and it's tiny little pieces.
So, Pam, another point to you and 23 seconds available. A barge starting now.
They used to say that bargees stole children from the banks, and I was always rather frightened to stand on the banks, even of the old... bugger.
Repetition of the banks.
No, she said banks and then bank.
I
didn't
did.
she?
Did you, Pam?
Yeah.
I did.
Did you?
I did.
Okay, well...
She said I was then very nervous to stand on the bank. I don't think she repeated banks. Did you, Pam?
No.
Thank you. Anyway, the benefit of the doubt, whatever happens.
Well, we'll all hear it when it goes out, won't we?
13 seconds, Pam. A barge...
Why did you say "oh bugger," by the way, then, if you had... Was that the name of the barge?
Yes, it was. It was Bugger the Barge.
Yeah.
A well-known craft.
Rather unfortunate follow-up to Thomas the Tank Engine. And Bugger the Barge came over.
13 seconds, Pam. A barge starting now.
Ghostly apparition of a barge looming.
But then, speaking as a whistle went, again that extra point for doing so, and she has increased her lead at the end of that round. She's just 1 point separates them all. Pam Ayres, Julian Clary, Josie Lawrence, and Paul Merton in that sequence. And Pam, we're actually back with you to begin, and the subject I have here is outer space. We get around, don't we? Barge, outer space, but that's the subject, Pam. Go with it if you can, starting now.
I can understand my home, garden.
Oh, unless Pam has a different story. Which I'd love to hear.
No, Paul, you have a correct challenge.
Oh, do I?
You can save your sarcasm.
Isn't that sweet?
Yes, you said that. And you have 43 seconds on this occasion for outer space, starting now.
So I turned to Buzz Aldrin and I said, "This is not my idea of an holiday." As we headed towards the moon, and I could see outer space all outside the window, and I realised as I turned to my fellow astronaut...
Josie challenge.
Repetition of turn.
Yes, that's right.
It's such a natural way of speech, isn't it? Paul,
It
you got
shows
in
I'm
first.
comfortable with everyone, doesn't it?
Repetition of USSR. No, of very,
You're
certainly.
okay. Very, right.
Yeah.
26 seconds, Paul. Outer space, back.
Long time ago, the Martians will gather round.
Pam challenge.
Well, we're not talking about Mars, we're talking about outer space.
Oh, where's that then? Outside Milton Keynes?
Well, Pam, I always considered Mars.
We've had vast before.
Yes, you did have
Did
vast
we?
space. Yes, vast space.
I thought that was me.
I don't remember saying it, but I'm sure I did.
I said it.
Ah, well, maybe that was the mistake.
I don't know.
What
But
does the
no,
audience
I
think?
don't know, but I don't know that I didn't, so...
What does the audience think? Did he say it before?
I thought I was bound to get it back, but we've only got 3 seconds, got no chance.
No. So, Julian, 3 seconds on outer space, starting now.
Outer space.
Paul challenge.
Sadly, hesitation.
Paul, I'll be very generous. In view of what's all gone on just a moment ago, I'll give you a bonus point for your humour and the laughter, but you had an incorrect challenge, Julian. Another point to you, and 2.5 seconds now.
So half a second had passed then.
Yeah. Outer space starting now.
How dreary. You might as well go to Ashford, that's all I can say.
So it's very even if you're interested in the score. Josie Lyons is only 1 point behind Paul Merton, and he's only 1 point behind our joint leaders, Julian, Clary and Pam Ayres. And Paul, we're with you to begin. A harmonica. Tell us something. Why isn't it an harmonica? I don't know.
An harmonica? What should it be?
And you have 60 seconds, Paul, if you want it, starting now.
An harmonica, a harmonica, however you describe it, it is a simple instrument that's musical that you can keep in your pocket and play at any given time. I once met the harmonica player, Larry Adler, and it was because I was doing a Radio 4 show, and I was very keen to meet him because he'd once played tennis with Greta Garbo, Groucho Marx and Charlie Chaplin in a doubles tournament, and I thought it was a fascinating piece of movie history. Harmonicas played a large part in the Goon Show when Max Geldray, who is a professional man of that particular noise-making thing, and he would appear in various extracts and he would say things like, hello, my name is what I mentioned before, and I play this is what I said earlier. And this was an extraordinary moment for people who listened to the particular...
Julian challenge.
What?
Yes, it was hesitation.
Yes, it was. You came
Was
to a
it?
halt. Yes, you came to a halt.
Did I?
You were going so fast.
I was
you
going
didn't
too
realise
fast,
it,
wasn't I? Yeah.
So, Julian, you've got him with 17 seconds to go, and harmonica, 17 seconds starting now.
The harmonica is one of many instruments that I am adept at. I wrap my lips around the harmonica and off I go. You can't help but tap your feet when you hear me play. I'm also good at the guitar, but that would be deviation, so I'm going to return.
Paul challenge.
Well, it's deviation.
Paul, you cleverly got him with 2 seconds to go.
Oh, that's outrageous.
And harmonica, a harmonica, whichever you want, starting now.
As the first notes drifted across...
So at the end of that round, Josie Lawrence and Pam Ayres are equal, or almost equal, in third place. No, they're in second place, aren't they? Because Paul Merton and Julian Clary are equal in the lead. And Julian, we're back with you to begin. Broadway. Tell us something about Broadway in this game, starting now.
I first appeared on Broadway in 1985 in a production of West Side Story. I was a jet. I was very convincing. I used to waddle around with my legs wide apart. And I...
I thought it was a hesitation.
It nearly was. It wasn't quite, Pam. I don't think so.
It was quite a prolonged
I don't remember that particular choreography, wandering around with your legs wide apart. It was probably a radical interpretation.
You had to be there, I think.
I know. I don't know how I missed
how
it.
do you wander with legs wide apart? Your legs should be quite close if you're wandering.
Oh, you can get used to anything, Nicholas.
Right. Julian, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and say it was an incorrect challenge, and so you have another point, and you have 46 seconds. Broadway, starting now.
I then appeared on Broadway in A Streetcar Named Desire as that brute wearing a wife-beater vest. And it was an award-winning performance, and I believe I took home an Oscar and a Tony.
Paul challenge.
Not for a stage performance, you didn't. You could have got a Tony Award.
I just said a Tony.
No, you
See what
said
I'm
Oscar.
saying?
You said to you, Broadway is the subject, starting now.
I was walking down Tooting Broadway with my friends Oscar and Tony when I suddenly saw the Granada. And what a magnificent bingo hall that was. Initially built as a cinema in the 1930s, its ornate structure is a wonder to behold. You see these particularly elaborate designs as you look up inside these golden curlicues, and you can imagine people from the olden days wandering around, dressed as usherettes, shining their torches in their face, and you can't do that in here, mate. And there would be an enormous crowd gathering to see the latest movies.
Right. So Paul Merton was speaking at that. Whistle went, gained that extra point. He's 1 point behind our leader, Julian Clary, and he's a few points ahead of Pam Ayres and Josie Lawrence. And Josie, it's back with you to begin. Tarot cards. I don't know whether that's your area of knowledge and interest, but speak on the subject, starting now.
I had my tarot cards read once on the Isle of Wight. There's quite a few people over there that do that kind of things, and mediums and stuff. So what happens is you cut the cards and they place them out in front of the table. There's things like the sun and the moon, the priestess, the hanged man. I drew that and was a little bit scared, but apparently he can mean very positive. Oh, no, I was going to say things again.
Julian, you challenge first.
Hesitation.
It was a hesitation, yes. So, Julian, you have the subject. Another point, of course. Tarot cards. 32 seconds starting now.
I think tarot cards are the devil's work. I once wandered into a booth with someone who called herself Madame Petralengo, and the things she told me about my future don't bear repeating. Just a minute wasn't there for a start. Apparently, I was going to go up a mountain in Switzerland and learn to yodel. I think she was talking in code, because something very similar did occur, but this is not the sort of thing people want to listen to while they're preparing their lunch of a Sunday. Yes, tarot cards, no good will come of them.
Right, so Julian Clary, speaking as the whistle went, gained an extra point and has increased his lead at the end of the round. And we are moving into the final round. And I'll give you the scores as we do that. Pam Ayres and Josie Lyons are almost equal in third place. They're just behind Paul Merton, who's 3 points behind Julian Clary, who's in the lead. And Pam Ayres, we're with you to begin. And the subject is In the Fast Lane. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
I have always believed in living life in the fast lane. Sex, drugs, rock and roll, bondage, S&M. I've managed to avoid them all and have instead used to the glorification of my life the business of travel. I have stood agog at the foot of erupting volcanoes, have gazed into the spectacular caverns of the Grand Canyon and marvelled at the crumbling glaciers of New Zealand. All these things I have gathered about me, all these experiences.
Josie challenge.
I'm going to say a repetition of all these, because
Yes,
they were
all
so
these
close together.
Yes, yes. So, Josie, you've got in with 22 seconds to go. Another point, of course. In the Fast Lane, starting now.
In the fast lane was something that I used to like doing when I had my old Merc. Motorways were especially...
Paul challenge.
Hesitation.
Absolutely.
Yes, indeed. In the Fast Lane is with you now, Paul, with 14 seconds to go, starting now.
I was running with a wild gang in the 1980s. Our hero was Nicholas Parsons. Drug addict, sex maniac. He was all these things.
Pam challenge.
There was a stumble on Maniac. I thought it was a hesitation.
You'd stumble if you were running with us in the 1980s.
And you didn't have him for deviation of what he said about me.
No. Well, everybody knows it's true. Say that the century was just a blind.
Pam, you had a correct challenge. You have in the Fast Lane 7 seconds available, starting now.
I have never fancied injecting my pristine body with chemicals of any kind, to be honest.
Pam Ayres, speaking with the whistle wind, gain that extra point. And for those interested in the points and the scores, I will give you the final situation. Josie Lyons, who gives such value, always didn't get quite as many points as the others, so she finished in 4th place. Just ahead of her was Pam Ayres, who always gives great value. She didn't get quite enough points to win, and she was just 1 point behind Paul Merton, and Paul was only 1 point behind Julian Clary. So, Julian, 1 point ahead. We say, you are our winner this week. It only remains for me to say thank you to these 4 delightful players of the game, Paul Merton, Pam Ayres, Josie Lyons and Julian Clary. I thank Hayley Sterling, who's helped me with the score, and the team. Goodbye. Tune in again the next time we play Just a Minute. Welcome to Just a Minute. Oh, thank you. Thank you is Nicholas Parsons. And as the minute waltz fades away, once more it's my huge pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country, but around the world. But also to welcome to the programme four exciting, dynamic personalities who this week are going to play Just a Minute. And they are, seated on my right, Paul Merton and Janey Godley, and seated on my left, Zoe Lyons and Gyles Brandreth. Please welcome all four of them. Beside me, it's Hayley Sterling, who's going to help me with the score, and she'll blow the whistle when the 60 seconds have elapsed. And as usual, I'm going to ask these four players at different times to speak on a subject that I give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the Edinburgh Festival Fringe. So let us begin the show with Paul Merton knitting.
Knitting?
Knitting. So can you tell us something about knitting, Paul, in this game, starting now?
Knitting is not a skill I've ever acquired, but I do remember my mother knitting in front of the television set and the knitting needles clacking away as she produced a jumper, a pullover, other items of woolen wear. And one day I said to her, do you find it a therapeutic practice to knit away? And she said, yes, I do. It reminds me of the time when I was growing up when there wasn't a lot of money around and you could make your own clothes or items of furniture through knitting. Speedboats, for example, wheelbarrows.
Giles is challenged.
Repetition of items. We had items of clothing earlier and then
Yes.
items
Oh,
of
yes.
furniture.
No problem with knitting a speedboat, but...
So, Giles, you have a correct challenge. You get a point for that, and you take over the subject. And there are 34 seconds available if you need it. Knitting, starting now.
Knitting is a wonderful craft for children to undertake. The modern kitty is busy playing Minecraft or Fortnite.
Zoe
I
challenge.
think there were two crafts. A wonderful craft for children to undertake.
Yes.
And then Mindcraft.
Oh, Minecraft is one word.
Is it, though?
Yes, it is.
Oh, I'm not hip with the kids. Sorry.
I'm afraid
Sorry.
Giles is right.
Okay.
No, but well tried.
Thank you.
Give her a bonus point for trying.
Thank you very much. Yay! Hooray me.
Giles, you have a point because it was an incorrect challenge. 26 seconds still available. Knitting, starting now.
Other bambinos will be photographing their private parts and Snapchatting them to friends. But my idea is knitting is what we need to see the next generation doing. Taking their needles and creating something beautiful, colourful and warm as well. I myself am a knitting expert. Learned it in the Cubs before the master was arrested. And I have the badge to prove it. What an experience it was, knitting when I was but a wee bell.
In this game, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. It was Giles Brandreth, and so he's not only in the lead, except for Zoe, who's got a bonus point. He's the only one to have any other points. Janey Godley, would you begin, or not begin, would you take the next round? A lazy Sunday. You tell us something about a lazy Sunday in just a minute, if you can, starting now.
My favourite lazy Sunday is when I wake up and walk slowly down the hall, pulling on items of clothing like socks, slippers, a good bra, comfy top and a hoodie. I head out into the lazy Sunday of Glasgow, walking along the Great Western Road looking for a bar that will sell a huge Sunday lunch. Who doesn't love a big giant Yorkshire pudding, some sausage, a chicken?
Paul challenge.
Vegetarians.
Oh, I think that deserves a bonus point. But Janey was interrupted, so she gets a point, and she keeps the subject. There are 34 seconds available. Still with you, Janey. A lazy Sunday starting now.
One Sunday I never woke up until Tuesday. That was how lazy my Sunday was. Sleeping is my favourite thing to do. Tuck my head into the pillow, get my wee sausage dog tucked under.
Zoe challenge.
There was another
There was
sausage.
another sausage there.
There was
yes.
another sausage.
I hate vegetarians.
I'm not one.
Zoe, you have a correct challenge. You got a point for that, of course. There are 22 seconds still available. You tell us something about a lazy Sunday starting now.
My favourite thing to do on a lazy Sunday morning is to pour myself a massive cup of coffee, which I will enjoy in a comfy chair, perhaps by a window. Perhaps that...
Paul, you challenge.
It's a repetition of perhaps.
And that's
certainly.
right, Paul.
Yeah.
And you've got him with 11 seconds to go on a lazy Sunday, having got another point, of course, starting now.
The Small Faces pop group recorded a single in the 1960s that was all about the subject of a lazy Sunday. And if I could remember the lyrics, I would recite them to you now. In fact, as I speak, I can recall the...
Right. So at the end of that round, Paul, speaking as the whistle went, he's now in the equal lead with Gyles, and then Janey, Godley and Zoe Lyons are following. Zoe, we'd like you to begin the next round. The subject of a Scottish subject now, a ceilidh. Can you tell us something about a ceilidh in this game, starting now?
I love to go to a ceilidh. The last time I went to a ceilidh, I was about 16 years old, and I enjoyed all of the dances, the Gay Gordon, the Dashing White Sergeant, and a lot of the other ones that I can't quite remember. There's so much fun to be had at a ceilidh. Musicians.
Gyles, you challenge first.
Hesitation, I'm afraid.
I think I had a slow breakdown there, Charles.
Just a little slight
very
hesitation.
well.
It was a slight hesitation.
You're right. So, Gyles, the correct challenge. 44 seconds still available. Tell us something about a ceilidh, starting now.
I've always been fascinated by the word ceilidh and the spelling of it, which is quite challenging. C-E-L-I-D-H is one of the versions with which I am familiar. The music at a ceilidh, though, is gorgeous, particularly the Irish ceilidh. You can have a wild party in Dublin with ceilidh songs and dances, the Irish harp play...
Zoe, challenge.
Two Irish, I think.
Yes, two Irish.
Wasn't one Ireland and the other Irish?
No, an Irish ceilidh, I think you said.
No, maybe I did. Maybe I did.
Yes.
Concede that on this occasion.
Zoe, a correct challenge, a point to you. A ceilidh back with you. 22 seconds available, starting now.
Some of my favourite instruments that you might hear at a ceilidh are the uilleann pipes, which are, of course, a pipe from...
Janey, you challenge first.
It was hesitation.
Hesitation, yes. So a lovely Scottish lady will now tell us some more about a ceilidh with 15 seconds to go, starting now.
A ceilidh feels like a really big fight with your feet, to drums and pipes and songs. People bang into each other. Somebody once got pregnant at a ceilidh. I know who that was. It was my mum. She called me Ceilidh Janey. That's actually my real name now. Lovely big...
Right, so Janey Godley was in speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point, and they're all equal. But it may not last for long. Gyles, Brandreth, your turn to begin. The subject, make, do and mend. Tell us something about that in this game, starting now.
I've long been fascinated by the history of entertainment, and Wilson, Keppel and Betty were three of my favourite entertainers. Another trio, less well known, were Make, Do and Mend. Tom Make, Jack Do and Sally Mend. She was a bit of a goer. They were the Andy Pandy, Looby Loo and Teddy of popular entertainment in the 1930s.
Zoe, challenge.
I think we had a repetition of entertainment.
You did, yes. We'll listen, Zoe.
But that was very good, Charles. I was enjoying it. I was torn whether to press or not, because it was quite entertaining.
It's the story of my life.
Right, Zoe, a correct challenge. A point to you. And 36 seconds available. Make, do and mend, starting now.
Make, do and mend is what a lot of us have to do in these times of austerity. We have to take some of the old things that we have in our cupboards and make them new again. Bring new life back into... I've said new twice, for the love of God.
So, Gyles, you'll challenge first. 25 seconds available. Tell us something about make, do and mend.
A little while ago, I was telling you about my troubled time in the Cub Scouts many years ago. And I secured the badge for Make, Do and Mend because I managed to make do with a sock that needed to be mended. And I actually darned a wonderful way with knitting needles of...
Paul, challenge.
Oh, sadly, hesitation.
Yeah, no
Yes,
question of
indeed, it was. So, Paul, we're back with you. 9 seconds are still available. You tell us something about make, do and mend.
As I faced the firing squad in Mexico, I realised that my prison uniform was no longer what it should be. I decided to make, do and mend. Then the ghostly figure of Nicholas...
So Paul Merton was then speaking as the whistle went. He's now equal in the lead with Gyles Brandreth, and the other two, Zoe and Janey, are just 1 point behind. And Paul, it's your turn to begin again. Mission impossible. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
It's a very successful film series these days. I believe the latest movie has just been released. My memory of it goes back to the 1960s when Jim Phelps was the name of the hero, played by Peter Graves, with that magnificent title music written by Lalo Schifrin, I believe his name was.
Giles challenge.
I believe.
Yes, I believe.
Oh, yes,
I
yes.
believe, yeah. But we were so impressed with what you were saying, a lot of us didn't pick that up.
No.
So, Giles, you did. So you have a correct challenge, a point. 45 seconds. Tell us something about Mission Impossible, starting now.
I hoped this was to be a Brexit-free zone, but the phrase Mission Impossible has come to the fore. What a period this has been in our national life, trying to solve this problem of getting the United Kingdom out of the European Union. Mission Impossible. Would it make a movie one day? And if so...
Paul, challenge.
No.
I didn't ask if it would make a successful movie, did I?
But anyway, it got a big laugh, and I think out of fairness I should give a bonus point to Paul for that. But have you got a challenge? Thank you, the audience agree, or two of you doing it.
No, I'm just relieved to have stopped him in his tracks, essentially.
You don't have a challenge within the rules?
I don't,
No, right. So, you interrupted, Giles? Yes. You keep the subject, you have a point. 23 seconds still available. Mission Impossible.
Mission Impossible it is. Carry on up the channel with playing the role of Theresa May, Barbara Windsor at her most exciting and ebullient. Who will Sid James play? Boris Johnson, perhaps?
Paul challenge.
No, I was right to challenge last time. There are some images that shouldn't be in our head. But it was also a repetition of play.
Yes, right, true. Well done, Paul. A point to you, and you have 10 seconds to tell us something about Mission Impossible, starting now.
When I was a young boy, I used to pretend to be playing Mission Impossible. Me and my friends would gather around and listen to secret tape recordings, which would then self-destruct after 5 seconds. And
So Paul Merton, speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point. He's now in the lead, 1 ahead of Giles Brandreth, and they're 3 or 4 points ahead of Zoe Gale and...
Zoe Lyons.
I know it is. I was just trying. Zoe Gale was a very famous singer whom I knew very well.
Yeah. You mention her quite a lot every time Zoe's on. You always mention... You always mention Zoe Gale.
Once they say Zoe, Gale comes in.
Yeah. And which century was this that you...
Before you were born.
Yes.
Well, she was in that famous show just after the war with Sid Field and Jerry Desmond, and Terry Thomas was also in it. Discovered it. And Zoe Gale was discovered and became the singing sensation of the time. I met her, and she was a sensation. Right.
And I remind you of her.
So when I say Zoe, it seems quite natural to say Zoe Gale.
Can I tell you, Nicholas, that my wife is sitting next door to your wife, just over there?
Was the show called Strike a New Note?
Strike a New Note. Well done.
Strike a New Note.
George and Alfred Black, Strike a New Note at the Prince of Wales Theatre in the West End of London. Janey, we're back with you to begin. Oh, and the subject now, lovely, the River Clyde. I think you know a wee bit about this one, Janey. So go on it. 60 seconds, starting now.
Mrs. Maguire wet in the fire. The fire was...
Paul,
It was a special song, but I should have just thought about it first.
Oh, it was unfortunately a repetition of Fire.
Yeah, I know that now. In my head, it didn't have that. In my head, they went, Janey, here's a brilliant song, an old traditional song about the River Clyde everybody will love. But the other part of my head didn't go, don't repeat the word fire.
But you did, and Paul came in first.
He did.
He gets a point. 56 seconds still available. Paul, tell us something about the River Clyde, starting now.
Well, I'm very happy to give Janey back the subject if she can continue the song without repeating the word fire.
Right, carry on, Janey.
Okay. I can't.
So, Zoe, you challenge first then?
There was a bit of a pause there.
I think there was a hell of a pause.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Zoe, 51 seconds still available. The River Clyde, starting now.
The River Clyde is, of course, famous for shipbuilding, which happened all through the final centuries long ago, where massive boats were built on its beautiful banks. Up and down the river, you would see these incredible vessels being launched into the river with a bottle of iron brew smashed off the front of it, sailing off into the seas to travel all around the world. The River Clyde sent its vessels here, there.
Gyles challenge.
Repetition of vessels.
Oh, yes.
And you were doing so good. I was almost reminiscent there.
Thank you.
Mrs. Maguire peeing in the fire has got nothing on that.
Gyles, you challenge first.
Repetition of vessels.
Oh, that's well done. The River Clyde as a subject, Gyles. 26 seconds available, starting now.
Channel 5 have just invited me to take part in a show called The Real B&B in... Well done.
It's so easy, isn't it?
Yes.
No. It's natural.
Spot on.
Oh, if only he'd refused the breakfast, you'd have been all right.
Zoe, you got in, of course, first. You get a point for a correct challenge. The River Clyde is back with you, and 19 seconds available, starting now.
My favourite icon on the River Clyde is the Finniston crane that stands like a majestic piece of industrial machinery, stoic, solid, and always there to remind us of the historic industrial revolution that happened along its fine banks.
Oh, Gyles challenge.
Banks.
You mentioned it.
Repetition.
Before. Yes. Gyles had a correct challenge, and he's got 3 seconds to go. Oh, the River Clyde, Gyles, starting now.
Och, aye, on the River Clyde, there I sail with a me.
Oh, you'd get flung in the Clyde for that nonsense.
So Gyles has moved into the lead, one ahead of Paul Merton. And then comes Zoe Lyons and then Janey, Godley in that order. Zoe, we'd like you to begin the next round. The subject, topical one here, August. Tell us something about August, starting now.
August means only one thing for me, the fantastic Edinburgh Fringe Festival. When every comic, clown, acrobat and actor in the world congregates in this beautiful, cobbled city that always seems to be going up. Always up, emphasising how up it is. I've been up a lot of hills.
So, Paul,
this
you
last
challenge
week.
first.
Repetition of always.
Yeah. August, that's the subject, Paul. You have another point. You have 44 seconds if you need it, starting now.
August Strindberg was a playwright, but I've never seen any of his plays, so I won't talk about him. It's the month between July and September. People think of August as being the highlight of the English summer, but I think to myself also as well that if you want to get a taste of autumn, you come to Edinburgh in August, because there you feel the cold wind coming up the River Clyde as Nicholas Parsons...
Zoe challenge.
Well, it's geographically incorrect.
I know.
I didn't know you were so possessive about your rivers.
It would have been so easy to say the River Forth, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would have done, yeah.
No. Anyway, Zoe, you got him first. Deviation. August is back with you. 21 seconds available, starting now.
August is the month when everyone in France...
Gyles challenge.
Repetition of month.
Oh, yes, you mentioned it right at the
Your
beginning.
favourite month of
My
the
favourite
year.
month,
Oh,
you said
gosh,
right at the
it,
beginning.
it rolls over. It's like the jackpot.
No. Gyles, the correct challenge. 18 seconds are still available. August starting now.
August Strindberg is one of the most fascinating figures in all world literature, about whom we should know a great deal more than apparently we do. He was Swedish, and among his dramas is The Father, a truly coruscating piece of theatre that is visceral in its intensity and would be...
So Giles Brandreth, speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point, and he has moved ahead of Paul Merton, and trailing a little are Zoe Lyons and Janey Godley. And Paul, it's your turn to begin again. The subject here is just simply sponge. Tell us something about sponge in this game, starting now.
Dad's Army has just been celebrating its 50th anniversary, first broadcast in 1968, and there was a character called Private Sponge, played by an actor named Colin Bean. He wasn't one of the main individuals in that programme, people may not even remember him, but he was nevertheless in virtually every single episode. Usually standing next to John Laurie or perhaps Arnold Ridley at the back of the throng, he would occasionally interject with the odd line. Sponge is something that you can also dip into your bath and put water all over yourself if you're lying there naked, dreaming of the good days. Zoe Gale was somebody that I remember very well in a performance of Bring It Up to Me, I Can't Be Bothered to Go and Get It Myself. And what a wonderful review that was. She was ideally matched by the magnificent Duchess of York, who at that time was a pub in the East End of London, and was also seen on the English stage for the very first time. Sponge!
Giles, challenge.
I felt we'd gone so far from Sponge with that deviation. I was going to say deviation.
I was enjoying it.
I know you were.
It was Sponge just as you buzz, so that makes his challenge, ridiculous, doesn't it, Nicholas?
No. Yeah. It makes it timely. You were coming back because you yourself realised you'd gone so far down Nicholas's memory lane.
That's not a long journey, I can tell you.
I think the fair thing to do is to give Paul a bonus point for that wonderful laugh he got, and Giles a point for a correct challenge, and tell him he's got 7 seconds on Sponge. Giles, starting now.
I have made a sponge cake in the shape of a sponge, the one that looked a bit like the loofah I had in 1953 in my first...
So at the end of that round, it's much the same. Giles is just in the lead ahead of Paul Merton. And then comes Zoe Lyons and then Janey Godley. And Janey, we're back with you to begin. The subject now, another erudite one, Elizabeth Bennet. Tell us something about that character in this game, if you can, starting now.
Elizabeth Bennet was the second eldest of 5 girls of a family that wanted to marry off their children. She was sometimes known as Lizzie, Betty, Bunty, Big Bunty.
Paul, you challenge
first. I can hardly believe I'm saying this, but it was a repetition of Bunty.
Yeah. And I have to say, yes, you are correct. I heard it as well.
So well.
Paul got in first. 48 seconds available. Elizabeth Bennet, starting now.
The story of Elizabeth Bennet was dramatised on the West End stage in 1948, starring the magnificent Zoe Gale. She was a wonderful woman. She used to go out with Nicholas Parsons, but you can never remember her name. And then Elizabeth Bennet realised that she was more than a fictional character. She was a woman in her own right. Her brother Gordon was nearby, and she used to say to him, I shall not mention your name again because I've already said it. He said, Elizabeth, you can say my thing that I'm called by, and any time you like. She said, well, I won't at this particular juncture. And so she didn't. Elizabeth Bennet was one of the first train drivers ever to come out of Carlisle who made her own whiskey. What a wonderful character she was. She would distill it through her Wellington boots. What's going on? Who's that buzz there? Who buzzed there?
There were 2 characters.
Oh, that's fair enough. It was a good story.
I think we did enjoy that surreal nonsense so much, Paul. I think you deserve a bonus point.
Oh, that's
for
very
that.
kind. Thank you very much.
But, Zoe Lyons, you had a correct challenge. You have 12 seconds still available. Tell us something about Elizabeth Bennet, starting now.
Elizabeth Bennet went to my secondary school and she was really good at cross-country running and we hated her for that. We never completed the run because,
Oh, Giles.
No, he's made a mistake.
No.
Oh! Trigger happy finger.
Yeah.
You're right, you said run and then running. And
running, that's
It took
correct.
me 5 seconds to realise I'd done that, Giles, but I enjoyed the realisation when it finally
Don't worry,
came.
Julian. It was an incorrect challenge. You've still got 4 seconds if you need it. Elizabeth Bennet, starting now.
She would pale down the...
Poor challenge.
Well, it was a hesitation, sadly.
Oh, what?
No. She was being very dramatic.
I was breathing.
I'm sitting beside her, I can see her. I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. And you have another point. Keep going. 2 seconds. Elizabeth Bennet, starting now.
Elizabeth Bennet would speed...
And we're moving into the final round. So into the final round, with 3 people equal in the lead, and Zoe Lyons is going to begin because it's her turn. And the subject I have in front of me is duty-free. tell us something about duty-free in this game, starting now.
Surely the greatest pleasure of any trip abroad is filling up your basket with a load of duty-free. Who doesn't enjoy a 5-foot-long Swiss bar of chocolate? Who can't...
Paul, challenge.
Diabetics.
Being fair within the rules, I think give Paul a bonus point for that wonderful laugh, but you get a point because you were interrupted, and you keep the subject of duty-free. 49 seconds available, Zoe, starting now.
You go through any airport in the UK now, you are forced to...
Giles, challenge.
We had airport in the earlier announcement about you.
Yes. So Giles has got in with a correct challenge. Another point to him. 45 seconds to go. Duty-free, Giles.
When I was touring in Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, playing the role of Darcy to a very beautiful Elizabeth Bennet, we flew all the way to the south of France with the company, and going through duty-free, Mr. Collins, the character who plays the clergyman, was ridiculous in the amount of booze he put into the basket. Duty-free meant for him self-indulgence, and he then behaved abominably to the other girls in the particular family in the drama that we were going to do.
Zoe,
Sorry,
challenge.
no, I think I was trigger happy. It was in and we could let him go. I just got really competitive right there at the end. Just like an animal instinct came over me, and I was like, get him, get him, get him.
As you're sitting next to Giles Brandreth, I would have thought you could have controlled your animal instinct.
I didn't say what animal came out.
No.
There is an erotic charge. We're both conscious of it.
It is the most unlikely pairing, but...
Can I say...
The erotic charge is £15 an hour.
That's why they've separated us. I could not keep my eyes off him.
That's the best way. Don't turn your back on him.
Oh, another bonus point to Paul there. Giles, we're with you. 17 seconds still available. Duty-free, starting now.
Born Free was one of my favourite films, but the sequel, Duty Free, was not nearly so interesting. In it, Virginia McKenna played an assistant in a duty-free shop at an airport, and her husband, Bill Travers, was the person who was stocking up the supply.
Oh, it's a very interesting situation. Janey Godley, who always gives such great value, she finished in a magnificent 3rd place. I should have said 4th place, actually.
Yes! Yes!
Because Zoe Lyons finished up with Paul Merton, equal in 2nd place. Ooh. But only 2 points ahead was Giles Brandreth, where we say, Giles, you are the winner this week. We do hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. And it means to say thank you to these 4 fine players of the game, Zoe Lyons, Giles Brandreth, Janey Godley and Paul Merton. I thank Hayley Sterling, who's helped me with the score. She blows her whistle so beautifully. We're indebted to our producer, Richard Morris. We're deeply indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this amazing game. And we're even more indebted to this lovely fringe audience of the Edinburgh Festival Fringe. From our lovely audience, from me, Nicholas Parsons, and the team, goodbye, thank you, and tune in again when we take to the air and we play Just a Minute! Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the Minute Waltz fades away, once more it's my huge pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country, but around the world, but also to welcome to the programme 4 exciting and talented personalities who this week are going to play Just a Minute. And they are, seated on my right, Paul Merton and Joe Caulfield, and seated on my left, Mark Watson and Fred Macaulay. Please welcome all 4 of them. Beside me sits Hayley Sterling, He's going to help me keep the score and blow the whistle when the 60 seconds have elapsed. And as usual, I'm going to ask them to speak, if they can, on the subject that I give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition or deviation. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the Edinburgh Festival Fringe. So let us begin the show with Paul Merton. Paul, garden furniture. Can you tell us something about garden furniture in this game, starting now?
Well, garden furniture can be either permanent or temporary. One thinks of a wooden bench as a fixture, and a deck chair is more mobile. So I think to myself, either one you can be sitting in and perusing your wheelbarrow in the sunshine. You can dine al fresco. In fact, I once knew a man called Al Fresco, and he used to say to...
Fred, you challenge.
A reputation of...
Al fresco.
Well, one's one word and one's two. Al Fresco's outside dining, a man called Al Fresco. Now, these things don't happen by accident, you know.
No. Just a very convenient name for him to have, wasn't it?
It was a double repetition.
Was it?
Yes.
And,
Are you playing this time, Nicholas?
You're in Scotland, Paul. Give him his full name. It's Alistair Fresco.
Fred, you have a correct challenge. You take over the subject, and there are 42 seconds still available. Tell us something about garden furniture, starting now.
Usually when you see furniture in a garden in Scotland, it's an eviction, and that's when people just put their sofas out, and you might see armchairs, maybe a television set. But this year, 2018, we have had remarkable weather in Scotland. It has been sunny.
Paul, challenge.
Did we have a repetition of Scotland?
We did have a repetition of Scotland, yeah. Mind you can't repeat Scotland often enough. No. That's right.
It's only Al Fresco we have trouble with.
26 seconds are still available, Paul. You've got a point and you've got the subject back, and it's garden furniture starting now.
My good friend Alan Frisco once said to me, the great thing about garden furniture is it gets you into the great outdoors. That's great twice. That's a repetition.
So, Mark, he handed it to you.
I was going to say repetition, but Paul sort of self-policed that.
But it was a repetition.
It still counts, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So you have a correct challenge, and you have a point for that, of course. There are 17 seconds available, Mark, starting now.
I'll never forget what Alex Fresco, an acquaintance of mine, said to me. There's nothing better than...
Paul, challenge.
Well, he's doing my material.
I felt like it was working quite well for you, so...
When you see my posters, Paul Al Fresco Merton.
Alex Fresco's a different guy. He's his stepbrother.
Oh, no, fair enough. I withdraw my challenge.
Paul, we enjoyed the interruption. So what I like to do on those occasions is give you a bonus point because we loved it. Right. But you were interrupted, so you get a point, Mark.
Oh, thank you. All right.
And you have 12 seconds, if you need it, for garden furniture, starting now.
Anyway.
A bit of a hesitation.
There was a big hesitation. But Paul, he's only played the game once before,
yes.
So I'm going to be generous and say no, but I don't...
At what point will it become hesitation?
Test it and see.
OK, we'll test it and see.
But I won't give any points for that, Mark. But
No.
do start when I say now. There are 11 seconds available, Mark. Garden furniture starting now.
This person said to me, there is nothing better than being just out in your garden, enjoying the elements. It's very, very boring.
Paul, challenge.
Repetition of very, very.
Very,
it was,
very,
yeah. But I'm going to get enough points just from overrules, I think. So it'll be fine.
So, Paul, I have to give it to you on that occasion. A correct challenge for very... And there are still 4 seconds available. Garden furniture, Paul Merton, starting now.
As I look out of my window, I see before me the most magnificent chest of drawers.
In this game, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. It was Paul Merton, and it doesn't need me to tell you that he's in the lead at the end of that round. Joe Caulfield, we'd like you to begin the next round. The subject is a drum solo. Can you tell us something about that musical event and occasion in this game, starting now?
A drum solo is something that nobody really wants to hear, but if you don't let them have a drum solo, they will leave the band. That's why there are such things. I find it a good time to go for a drink at the bar, although I actually was a drummer once myself. I wasn't very good at it, but I was in a group and we had gigs, but I couldn't keep the beat. And they would say to me that you are on the wrong thing.
Mark, you challenge.
Hesitation.
There was a hesitation, I grant it, and you get a point. And you have 32 seconds for a drum solo starting now.
A drum solo may seem like a tedious prospect, but it's actually quite a skill to play percussion. A lot of people think it's the easiest part of being in a band, but in fact, there are so many different rhythms, there are so many different...
Oh, Paul challenge.
A repetition of there are so many different...
So many.
It was just about noticeable,
yes,
yeah.
So, Paul, a correct challenge. Another point to you. 19 seconds still available. A drum solo starting now.
It was midday. The drum was beating out a steady rhythm. I walked towards the post. The Mexican firing squad were facing in my direction. My crime, I'd once spoken to Nicholas Parsons in an offhand manner, and I was now being punished for it. As my sombrero was lifted off my head, they said, "Do you..."
So Paul Merton was again speaking as the whistle went and gained that extra point and has increased his lead at the end of the round. And Fred Macaulay would like you to begin the next round. A wee dram. Will you tell us something about a wee dram in this shows? You needn't do it with a Scottish accent like I'm doing now. But it comes naturally to you, right?
Not that accent, it doesn't.
Right. Fred, a wee dram, starting now.
You'll have a wee dram is not so much an invitation in Scotland as an instruction. Swill it round your mouth, over the throat, into your stomach, that warm feeling. Is there any better way to start a morning?
Joe challenge.
I would say that's deviation because he's encouraging people to drink first thing in the morning. I don't think that is a good and healthy thing.
Well, it is a devious thing to do, but that is not within the rules of the game. You can be as devious you like in your thought as long as you're not in your words, my darling.
OK.
You get a point for that, and you keep the subject, and there are 47 seconds still available. A wee dram starting now.
I might be quite unusual as a jock that I don't drink a lot of whiskey. But on the odd occasion that I do, I will have tried maybe Springbank or Islay whiskies, or Isla as it's pronounced by people who know how it's said.
Paul challenge.
Oh, sadly, hesitation.
Right.
Sadly correct.
Paul, another point. And the subject with you. You tell us something about a wee dram now in 33 seconds, if you can, starting now.
Having done a bit of filming up in Scotland, I realised that a wee dram whisky, as it's otherwise known, is regarded as a medicine by the Scottish people. No matter what is wrong with you, whether you've hurt your leg or you have a cold or perhaps your head is twice the size it was when you went to bed, then a wee dram is going to be exactly the remedy that you seek. Now, being an Englishman, I don't know a great deal about this amber liquid, but I'm willing to talk about it in the time that I have. I remember when I was... well, it was past then.
I caught a whiff of hesitance.
Well, that's your wee dram in the morning doing that. A whiff of hesitancy. I've never been so insulted.
A whiff of hesitance?
I don't do whiffs of hesitancy.
No, that wee whiffs, you can't have people for whiffs of hesitance. It's either a hesitation like Mark Watson did for us, or it's...
To use just one example.
Paul, an incorrect challenge, you point for that. And you have 8 seconds still. A wee dram starting now.
As Nicholas Parsons looked me sternly in the eye, he poured the contents of the bottle into my glass. I realised this was going to be a long night.
So Paul Merton was again speaking as a whistle went, gained that extra point, has increased his lead ahead of Fred Macaulay and Mark Watson. And Jo has yet to establish herself, but she's coming up from the rear. And Mark Watson, it's your turn to begin. The subject I have here is olives. Tell us something about those amazing fruits in this game, starting now.
Olive comes from a Latin term meaning I'm meant to enjoy this, but I wish I was having something else. They come in different sizes and colours. Green olives and black olives are the ones that we're most familiar with. But speaking in the most measured delivery that I can, I'm prepared to inform you that there are actually other varieties of olive, some of which I'll be able to describe to you now as soon as they've been invented.
Jo challenge.
I think he wanted me to challenge. There was a sort of slowing down of olive knowledge.
I had no expectation of getting that far, no.
No, I think it was a hesitation, Jo. So you have a correct challenge. You have a point for that. You have the subject of olives, and there are 35 seconds if you need it, starting now.
An acquired taste. That's what I was told as a child. Olives you will like when you are a grown-up. And weirdly, it's true. And I feel very mature because I do like olives and gin. And I never thought that I would like them, but they go together very well. And that's all I have to say.
So Paul gets a point for a correct challenge, which I know is going to tell us what it was.
Hesitation.
Hesitation.
And a fitting...
Slightly.
No,
Yeah.
no. But we give Jo a bonus point because we enjoyed the laugh she got at the end. And Paul, you've got the subject of olives. 15 seconds still available, starting now.
When Popeye searched the glove compartment of his car, he found a pair of underpants and he realised they were olives. What he was going to do with them, he didn't know. But she was a wonderful woman. He thought to himself, if only I can give her back these underwear, she will become...
So once again, Paul Merton was speaking as the whistle went. Gained that extra point and has increased his lead, and the other three are equal in second place. Paul, it's your turn to begin. If I had a magic wand, 60 seconds if you need it, starting now.
Well, it reminds me of an old joke, which I'll try and tell without making any of the classic mistakes in just a minute. If I had a magic wand, there was one day a national newspaper phoned up 3 foreign ambassadors and said, if you had a magic wand, what would you want for Christmas? And the French representative said, I would like world peace. And the German equivalent said, I would go for the end of all poverty. And the British ambassador said, I would like a small box of liqueur chocolates. And this was not worth bothering with, really, was it?
Friend, you've challenged.
That would be a hesitancy.
Yeah.
Forthwith.
I thought he'd go better than that, but clearly he didn't.
Correct.
Any laughs we get, can we graft them onto that last speech? That's a good one. They're a good audience, just 30 seconds behind me.
Friend, a correct challenge. A point for that. 30 seconds available. If I had a magic wand, starting now.
If I had a magic wand, the first thing I would do would be to get rid of all my other wands, which appear to be useless. I have no idea what a normal one looks like or what you're meant to do with it. But if you did have a magic wand, surely that would make you a magician. And if the magician relies...
Mark, you've challenged.
Hesitation, it was quite minimal.
Yes,
but...
well,
repeated magician as well. You could have had that. And as we all know, 2 magicians is way too many.
Trying to struggle away from repeating magician, and you stumble into hesitation. And Mark, you picked it up first. A point to you, 14 seconds available. If I had a magic wand, starting now.
If I had...
Mark, you've only played the game once before. Now,
I think I should be allowed to take an in-breath
You're
before...
going to lose every time, and Plummer's going to get you for hesitation. So when I say now, you have to take a deep breath. And I always pause and say, and your time begins. Take the breath. Now...
I see. So it's really a breathing issue for me.
So no points charged on that. Mark, you ready?
I couldn't be more ready.
If I had a magic wand, and your time starts now.
If I had
Paul.
Deviation, he didn't hesitate.
Give Paul a bonus point. We enjoyed that comment. Well, Mark has a point because he was interrupted, and he keeps the subject. And there are still 11 seconds available.
My nerves are in a terrible way.
If I had a magic wand, starting now.
If I...
No. Fred.
Repetition of breathing.
Fred, a good attempt, but not good enough to get a laugh. And so... Mark was interrupted. He gets another point.
This has been an exhausting minute of my life.
This is the best you've ever done.
I'm not complaining.
Yeah. Keep this up, Mark. You might come out the winner. Right.
Thank you.
There are still 9 seconds for you, Mark, if you want it. If I had a magic wand, starting now.
If I had a magic wand, all I would wish for was the ability to finish a minute in this game show without having difficulties, for example. But yeah...
So Mark Watson is then speaking as the whistle went and gained that extra point. And he has leapt forward. He's still in second place. But he's leapt. He's only a few points behind Paul Merton, who's in the lead. And then come Fred Macaulay and Jo Caulfield. And Jo, we're back with you to begin. And the subject now, another lovely Scottish subject. Balmoral. Tell us something about that royal place in this game, starting now.
The Queen, like a lot of people with a property in Edinburgh, rents it out during the festival for an exorbitant fee to some students. So that's why she goes to Balmoral. She actually goes for August and September, which I think is 2 months too much.
Paul challenge.
Sadly, repetition of 2.
So, Paul, a correct challenge. And there are 44 seconds still available. Balmoral starting now.
During the Second World War, there was rumours that somehow in the royal family there was a Nazi spy. British intelligence knew him as Nicholas von Parsons. There was no clue as to his actual identity, but I was summoned to go to Balmoral. You were right there, you're not coughing away, are you? I was summoned to go there and search out this evildoer. As I saw the Julian scar on his face, I realised that my prey was right in front of me. Balmoral's distance was just over the horizon, but I saw its shadow cast a gloomy picture over...
Frank challenge.
I was going to say deviation.
Yes, absolutely.
You couldn't see it, but it cast a shadow. Is that close enough, Paul?
The whole bloody thing is devious.
You challenged me on the shadow, but you let go the fact that Nicholas was a Nazi spy during the Second World War.
Yeah, well, you never know with these things.
Oh, really? What I put up with in just a minute.
Yes.
But I enjoy it.
Yes. You're only following orders, aren't you? Only following orders.
15 seconds are still available, Fred, for Balmoral with you starting now.
There is a 5-star hotel in Edinburgh that bears this name, and so popular is it with the royal family that they've called their estate up in Aberdeenshire after it. And they...
Paul challenge.
Well, sadly, hesitation.
Yeah.
Paul, another point to you and 5 seconds available. Balmoral starting now.
I once had a golden Labrador called Balmoral, and he was such a beautiful animal. One day I said to him...
Paul Merton with aim speaking as the whistle went and has increased his lead at the end of the round. Fred Macaulay, we're back with you to begin. And the subject now is My Big Break. Tell us something about that in this game, if you can, starting now.
After years of stand-up on the London comedy circuit, my big break came when I was booked to do Just a Minute in Ayres in 1996. This was going to be me heading to the London Palladium, perhaps.
Mark challenge.
London repeated,
yes.
I think.
He mentioned London.
Oh,
He said London Palladium.
Yes. Oh, you're right, London circuit, London Palladium.
Yes.
Damn.
Right, Mark, a correct challenge. And you have 49 seconds if you need it.
I should be fine, yeah.
Are you ready?
Yes.
My big break starting now.
My big break came in 2002 here at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe when I had the good fortune to win a stand-up comedy competition. These sort of situations are, of course, quite invidious because it involves competing with people who you naturally would be friendly with, so it's a little bit of an awkward situation to try to outperform them. Yet that's the sort of circumstances that we found ourselves in even now. Of course, we're all friends, and yet at the same time, none of us wants to look...
Joe challenge.
Is there a repetition of Friends?
Yes, there's friends with every...
You were very friendly with a lot of people, and I didn't believe you were either, so...
I felt like we were getting on quite well.
No, correct challenge, Joe. And you have a point, of course, and you have 25 seconds if you need it for My Big Break starting now.
My big break came in 2019, so I haven't had it yet because it certainly didn't occur when I went on Just a Minute and came last. I think I've done it before and come last before because I'll repeat myself.
Paul challenge.
Ironically, repetition of coming last.
I am nothing if not consistent.
Paul, you have My Big Break as the subject. You have 14 seconds starting now.
My big break here in Edinburgh happened in 1987 when I physically broke my leg and I was in the hospital just over the road. It's no longer there. I also developed a blood clot on my lung, which is called a pulmonary embolism, and hepatitis A, which I was reliably informed had been given to me.
So you really suffered, but you suffered
I suffered, but it was worth it, because I got a point on Just a Minute.
I'm going to say that's right. You didn't suffer in vain.
No.
Because you kept going
Well,
to
I
the
did
whistle.
actually, because it was a pulmonary embolism, but...
You didn't suffer in vain in this show.
No, exactly.
You kept going to the whistle, gained an extra point, and have increased your lead. Mark Watson, it's back with you to begin. The subject now we've got here is Bird Song. Can you tell us something about Birdsong starting now?
Birdsong is the name of a contemporary novel by the writer Sebastian Faulks, which details some of the horrors undergone by people in the war, although they are nothing compared with the struggles of Mr. Paul Merton when he was confined to hospital not far from here, actually, in Edinburgh, suffering from a range of symptoms, including a pulmonary embolism and something else.
Paul Charles.
Well, earlier I said he was doing my material. He's now... He's now reciting my medical history.
I see it as a sort of tribute, Paul.
I think it's quite a clever way to keep going in just a minute.
Absolutely. It really
Paul,
was
we
worth it.
enjoyed the interruption. We give you a bonus point for the laugh you
Paul
got.
will be glad of that. He's been struggling in this game.
But Mark, you get a point because you were interrupted. And you have 40 seconds still. Bird song, if you need it, starting now.
Of course, what we normally like to think of when we think of... Oh, no, that's right.
Paul, you challenge.
Well, I was going to say it was hesitation, but I'm happy to withdraw the challenge. But I think just...
He did repeat some. He did think.
He did say think, yeah. I know.
And you're
But
nodding.
obviously, yeah.
Fred, what do you think?
I withdraw it. I withdraw it. Let him have it back. It's going to come back to me again in a moment anyway.
So, all right, you withdraw the challenge. So we give the point to you, Mark.
Thank you. I don't really know what's going on anymore.
36 seconds still on Bird Song, starting now.
So for the next few seconds before Paul Merton reassumes the subject, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about birdsong. What we like to think of when we evoke the sentence or phrase birdsong is the beautiful noise made by those flying friends as they whittle around through the trees. We never really know what goes through their heads. Are they really singing, or is it just their only means of communication? I suppose there are ornithologists out there who could enlighten us, but for most of us, they remain enigmatic to us, these peculiar, tiny little things with their short lifespans. What would it be like to be...
Joe, you challenged first. What was your challenge?
I thought there was things. I thought there was
yes, there was
quite a lot of
indeed.
things.
Quite right,
flying
yeah.
things.
Well, a massive improvement.
That was absolutely a real adrenaline rush for me.
You were really on song there.
Hey, he's still got it, hasn't he?
A bonus point to Nicholas Parsons. Right, Joe, a point to you, and you have 1 second to go.
That's heartbreaking.
Try and keep going for 1 second on Bird Song, starting now.
What a blooming...
Joe Caulfield was then attempting to speak as the whistle went and has got another point, and she's moved forward. She's still in second place, but she's in third place, actually, because Mark Watson is in a strong second place behind our leader, Paul Merton. Fred's bringing up the rear, 1 point behind Joe. If you're interested in the points, I think this audience couldn't care less.
I'm interested in knowing if you've ever had to go on a second page with points for Paul before. I think this is, what is the record score in just a minute?
I've no idea. Interesting to find out.
No. Anybody been paying attention through the series?
For 50 years? Yeah.
If you read my book, welcome to... Joe Caulfield, it's your turn to begin. Black Forest Gatto. 100 seconds? No. That's what this says, 100. 1 minute, it says, really. 60 seconds, starting now.
I don't like Black Forest Gatto because I don't like chocolates.
Oh. Mark, you challenge, yes.
There was a repetition.
There was a repetition. And there are 56 seconds still available. Mark, you tell us something about Black Forest Gatto starting now.
Black Forest Gatto is a rather sickly confection. You get the word out.
Paul challenge.
Hesitation, Sam.
Yeah, hesitation. And Black Forest Gatto is with you, Paul. There are 52 seconds available if you need it, starting now.
Black Forest Gatto is one of those desserts that Nicholas Parsons doesn't like. He's not very fond of dairy, so anything that has a lot of cream or milk in it is something that he can't easily stomach. Black Forest Gatto was invented by 3 people, George Black, Tommy Forrest and Gordon Gatto. And when they got together, they realised that their nomenclatures put together would conjure up the description of buzz then.
Mark challenge.
I think he said together twice.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And you have 30 seconds if you need it on Black Forest Gatto starting now.
So these 3 gentlemen conspired and said we could probably...
Do you want me to introduce you to my wife?
I don't think you better have.
So your challenge, Paul?
Oh, mischievousness. No challenge within the rules of the game.
No. But we get a bonus point because you didn't interrupt it, man. I think you should have a bonus point for that because it was rather amusing what
Thank
you
you,
did
Nicholas.
then. So 24 seconds are still available, Mark, for Black Forest Gatto starting now.
Probably the best-known form of Black Forest Gatto is the one that contains cherries. This is too much for some people because it really is a rather sweet thing on top of what is already an extraordinarily...
Paul, you challenge.
Hesitation,
Yeah,
certainly.
there was a hesitation. So, Paul, you've got him with 11 seconds to go. Black Forest Gatto starting now.
As the trio of bakers attended their kitchen, they realised that together...
Fred, you've challenged.
Yeah, two togethers.
3 togethers, 4 togethers.
Yeah.
And Fred, another
I was going to buzz in anyway just to say it's been fun being here.
So give him a bonus point for the joke he made. And another point for a correct challenge. And you have 6 seconds if you need it, Fred, on Black Forest Gatto starting now.
I'm going to give you the recipe for Black Forest Gatto. Get a car, drive to Iceland, walk up the third aisle from the left-hand side.
So Fred McCauley was then speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point, and he's brought the show to an end with a flourish. Let me give you the final situation. Joe Caulfield and Fred McCauley finished in a little, a very strong 4th place. No, 3rd place, because they were equal, weren't they? Right. In 2nd place was Mark Watson, who came from nowhere, but finished up very strongly.
I was given an unusual amount of tuition during the show, I think.
But you did very well. You caught up on our leader, Paul Merton, but he still was quite a few points ahead of you.
So I didn't catch up on him.
So we say, for those interested in the points, we say, Paul, you are our winner this week. So, we do hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. It only remains to say thank you to our 4 fine players of the game, Paul Merton, Joe Caulfield, Fred McCauley and Mark Watson. And I think Hayley Sterling, who's helped me with the score, blown the whistle beautifully. And we're indebted to our producer, Richard Morris. We're deeply indebted to the man who invented this game, Ian Messiter. And we're deeply indebted also to this lovely audience of the Festival Fringe here. So from our audience, from me, Nicholas Parsons, and from the team, goodbye, thank you, and tune in again the next time we take to the air and we play Just a Minute!